Namaste.
Namaste.
I have with me here today Asmita Bijlani, who is a psychologist. She studied psychology first in Delhi. She did a BA from Kamala Nehru College and then an MA in psychology from Jamia. And then, after a gap of a few years during which she was uh, working, she went and did a 1 year course on expressive arts therapy at Mumbai, which she has just finished. She has a question about a very interesting topic, and that is falling in love. Go ahead, Asmita. What's the question?
For my question, we're going to be talking about falling in love. So, my first question is, what is this fall? We hear them say in movies all the time, I have fallen in love. And even a friend might come up to you and say that, hey, I think I've fallen in love with this person. So, what is this fall about?
Well, when a young boy says that he has fallen in love with a girl, what is it that he really means? Generally, uh, when he thinks that he is in love, what he means is that when I'm in the company of this person, I'm very happy. And if you think about it a little deeply, you would realize that the person is not actually in love with that girl, the person is in love with himself. The only shift has been that when he was going through his teenage years, he was all wrapped up in me, mine, and myself. But now suddenly something strange has happened, and he has started getting interested in the opposite sex. And amongst them, there's one person to whom he feels so attracted and in whose company he is so happy that he feels now have fallen in love. So now in his ego circle, there is not one but two persons. And he feels that this is one person with whom I can spend a lot of time. She makes me very happy, and I'm ready to do anything for her. And he thinks that these are the signs of falling in love, and that's what he means. But then the primary thing remains that he is very happy in her company, which means that he's still concerned basically with his own happiness. And so long as she also feels that she's very happy in his company, that illusion can continue. Both of them can continue to feel that we are in love with each other, but actually they are happy. They feel that they are in love because they are very happy in the other person's company, and they are primarily concerned with their own happiness. Which means that this type of a love is a sort of an illusion. And when is this illusion exposed? The illusion is exposed if one of them is not interested. Say, let's just take for convenience, and since that is more common pattern, uh, in any case, I like to be partial to girls. Uh, the boy says that I'm in love with the girl, but the girl does not want him. She is not happy in his company. She rejects him, first politely, then more assertively. And the boy, on his own side, tries to woo her in different ways, impress her in different ways, to try to do things which she would like. And when that doesn't work, he may go to other means. He may start threatening that I'll commit suicide or things like that. Or on the other side, he may start getting angry with her. Why don't you understand? I love you so much and you don't understand. Why can't you see that? Starts getting angry. And in rare cases, if even that anger doesn't work, he may, very rare cases, but we've all heard of those cases, he might try to rape her, even murder her, or throw acid on her face. Now, that is when this illusion is exposed. One doesn't hurt somebody who one loves. Why does this person hurt her if she thinks he's in love with her? Because he's actually not in love with her, he's in love with himself. When she uh, refuses to be a source of that happiness in which he is interested, he gets angry and sometimes violent with her. So that is when this illusion is exposed, which means that this love is based primarily on what we can get from the other person. Whereas true love is not about getting, but about giving. And that is why it is considered a fall.
Thinking about what the meaning of love is. Would you like to add what love essentially means from a spiritual perspective?
Well, that would be one big jump. from falling in love to love, which is at the highest level from the spiritual angle. Uh, so we'll go a little step by step. Now, we talked about falling in love and how this can be exposed. But let's assume that both of them are happy in each other's company and they decide to cement their relationship, they get married. And then, usually, what happens is after getting married, realize that they cannot get the happiness from the other person unless they are also willing to give a lot. Not only give her happiness in small ways, like say giving her a dinner or things like that, or if she's going on a journey, buying the tickets for her. And that is not the type of things. And she also realizes that just going to a movie together or having a date and so on, and or making some nice dish for him to eat, that is not all what is involved after marriage. The amount of sharing has to be much more. So spending a few hours together doing something for each other and remaining under this illusion is very easy. Compared to that, after marriage, it is sharing for 24 hours a day, 24/7 sharing. And in the Indian milieu, very often it means also sharing a lot with the family, rest of the family, usually the boy's family. And the couple finds that it is very difficult and essentially it is an unwillingness to give for which they were not prepared that leads to all types of friction between the two partners, friction with the rest of the family, and so on. But let's stick to the two partners. They themselves start having this friction. But because there's a commitment now, marriage involves a certain degree of commitment, they don't split immediately. They try to uh, still continue somehow. And their family, their families, the society, and sometimes even courts, counselors, and even courts. Because good judges don't say that, well, if you want a divorce, have it. They There's a lot of time involved in getting a divorce, and a lot of this time is spent sometimes by the judge trying to explain them, try to know each other better, try to understand each other better. Maybe you can get along. So even the good judges try to repair the marriage rather than straight away grant a divorce. So it means that from all quarters, there's pressure to somehow continue living together. Now, if they do that, very often what happens is that the marriage does succeed. Succeed in the sense that they give up the idea of splitting. So it's now a successful marriage. But what does the change that both of them have experienced during this process is that one cannot get without giving. And therefore, the relationship is now based on give and take. I give what she needs, she gives what he needs. And this type of give and take is what keeps them together. But all the same, they find that now life has settled into a certain mechanical routine. And especially after the children come, there are so many physical details to be attended to, taking care of the man, usually taking care of making sure that there is food on the plate. And then, if he's a good father, then taking care of the children, participating in childcare, maybe sometimes helping in the kitchen. And the woman, if she is a working person, straining herself, stretching herself as much as she can to take care of the job, to take care of the children, to take care of the rest of the family, to look after the house. And there's so much to do that in that process, they forget what life is all about. They forget all about love. And once in a while, then they reflect, they realize, where has all that love disappeared? Where there's no excitement, there's no thrill. It's just a routine life for which we have settled, a mechanical repetition of more or less the same thing day after day. Where is all that romance gone? But all the same, they have learned one important thing through the process, that love is not about getting, love is about giving, and they have settled down for a give and take. So, in a way, we say that the first phase when they had fallen in love and they were primarily interested in the happiness that I can get from the other person was animal love. And now they have risen to the level of human love. And this way, it can continue sometimes for decades. They can continue staying together for decades like that. And of course, through this process, they undergo a change and they keep getting uh, finding it easier to get along with each other. So all that can happen. But all the same, that zest is gone, that thrill and excitement is gone from the marriage. Then can come yet another phase, and that comes usually when there's a crisis. And the crisis can be that the husband loses the job, and or the wife gets an incurable illness, or one of the partners loses a parent or a sibling. Now, these can be traumatic events. And then, what does this person think? I have been with this person for 20 years. Now, I have to make him or her comfortable. This person is going through a difficult phase in life. It's my duty to make this person comfortable. It comes spontaneously. For example, if the husband has lost the job, the wife says, "Don't worry, we can spend much less than we have been spending so far. I'll make sure of that. I'm also educated. I can start working. If necessary, we'll sell my ornaments. You don't have to worry." On the other hand, suppose the wife has an incurable illness. He says, "Don't worry, I'll be your nurse. I'll take care of you. We'll get the best treatment possible. Don't worry about money. We'll find the money from somewhere or the other, but I'll get you the best possible treatment." Now, what is happening? Can you see the remarkable change as compared to falling in love? What has happened is that now the person has forgotten himself. He's out of the picture. He's thinking primarily of the other person. What is it that I can do for this other person? It's about giving, all about giving. Now, this is true love. This is love from the spiritual angle, the highest rung of love. As Mother has talked of the rungs of love. First one loves for the sake of getting, then one loves for the process of give and take, and then finally one loves for the sake of loving, for the sake of giving. There's no other expectation. That is what we call divine love. Of course, divine love is still one step further because that is not for one specific person. It is universal in character. It's for everybody. It's universal in nature. And it's unconditional. It doesn't depend upon the other person fulfilling certain conditions. That happens at the highest rungs of human love also, as we were talking in the case of a crisis which this couple is going through. So that love is not now based on how the other person behaves. It's unconditional in nature. And it does not expect anything in return. And in fact, in the normal situations, uh, even when there's no crisis, it is parental love that comes closest to divine love. In the sense, it is unconditional. It does not expect anything in return. But the place where it falls short is it is not universal. It is for a few specific children, children whom one considers one's own children. So that is what love is about from the spiritual angle. It's primarily about giving. And from the spiritual angle, the process doesn't have to stop with giving to the partner or giving to the children. It can extend to others because at the spiritual level, we are all interconnected. We are all interrelated. We are all one. Uh, Sometimes we put it in a sophisticated way by saying that we are all manifestations of the same divine, which means that we are just giving a form to the divine or the creator. The creator has become all of us and the rest of the creation, including inanimate matter. So that consciousness is there in everything, living and non living, animals and plants, and of course, the rest of the human beings. So, in that sense, at the deepest level, we are all connected and interrelated. And say, if we restrict ourselves even to human beings for the moment, uh, our differences may be there. We look different. The color of the skin may be different. The type of hair we have will be different. The language we speak is different. The religion, nationality, our opinions and ideas, and the way we dress, all these can be different. But all these differences are superficial as compared to the way in which we are the same. And that actually is the deepest level because that is the level at which we are all imperishable. That is our everlasting reality, our souls. That is our divine spark, our divine essence. And that is the level at which we are all one and interrelated. And in that sense, there is a rationale or a spiritual basis for loving everybody, for universal love. Because after all, whom do we love? We love people whom we find are more like us. Now, here we have a very fundamental similarity, rather sameness. So there is an obvious ground for feeling close to that person, being intimate with that person, for loving that person. And how do we express that love? We express love by giving. And what do we give? What we have. We can't give what we don't have. And to whom do we give it? We give it to the one who needs it. So it's just that complementary situation that is required. We are willing to give what we have to those who need it without caring for how that person is related to us in superficial terms, whether that person is biologically related, whether that person belongs to the same religion, whether the person speaks to the same language, whether it belongs to the same country. All that does not matter. So long as here is a person in front of me who needs something which I can give, he needs uh, what I can give more than I need it. I'm always happy to give it. That is the joy of giving. So love expresses itself through giving. That is true spiritual love. But then to move to that level, one has to go through stages. Most of us do not come equipped in this world right at birth to express that type of spiritual love or divine love or universal love. And we start with loving our parents because so natural. The parents love us. They give us love which comes very close to divine love. And the children also have full trust in their parents. They give that return, that love many times multiplied with all that innocence and purity. And that is what encourages the parents to go on loving the children. So it's sort of incentive, all the compensation and justification for the love that the parents give. Then, comes the phase when the children actually start distancing themselves from parents. And the parents start wondering what has happened. The parents go on loving the child, but the child doesn't express that love, at least in the same way anymore. Hmm? Don't touch me. No, the child tells the parent. Or uh, you don't know anything. The parents are always wrong. And it's the peer group that starts influencing the child much more. And for the rest of the time, the child is all wrapped up in me, mine, and myself. And then comes this phase of falling in love. So during all this phase, the parents have taken a backseat. Of course, that also returns later in life, but all the same, this is sort of the natural cycle, which means that love has been planted in us right from birth. And it's only during a certain phase that it goes into an eclipse. It never disappears completely, it gets eclipsed. Now, why has love been planted in us? It has been planted in us with a purpose. One, of course, obvious purpose is that unless we are in love with someone of the opposite sex and go through a relationship which involves intimacy and commitment and so on, the world cannot continue. But it also has a deeper purpose. Why this love can become universal? The deeper purpose is that that is how we are able to fulfill the purpose of our lives. That is how we are able to evolve. Evolve from how we arrive in this world to something better. To put it more clearly, the average human being in the world is basically an ego driven personality, which means it's all about me, mine, and myself. The attention is focused exclusively on the person himself. My needs are more important than those of others. My common cold is more important than somebody else's cancer. My opinions are always better than somebody else's. And sometimes it's form a collective ego. People belonging to my country are better than those belonging to other countries. My guru is better than somebody else's guru. So it takes all these types of collective expressions of the ego. But it's basically exclusive attention to oneself and somehow feeling that I'm more important, I'm superior. But then this ego boundary is an illusory boundary. The boundaries that separate us from all the others, me versus all the rest, that mentality. The boundary that separates me from all the others, which is defined by the skin, is only an illusory boundary. We just saw that at the deepest level, we are all one. And forget all those sophisticated ways of being a manifestation of the same divine and the same divine taking different forms and so on and so forth. In simplest language, we are all children of the same God. So if that is so, then this ego driven personality is also, in a way, a sort of a fiction, a necessary fiction, because without that, we may not achieve much, even on the spiritual plane. Because even on the spiritual plane, when a person decides that now I'll give a new direction to my life, I'll live a life which is not centered around me myself. I'll expand the scope of my concern, love, and concern. I'll give a new direction to my life. When a person says that, again, it is I'm no longer satisfied with the type of life I have been living. I'll give it a new direction. It's I involved there. That's also an expression of the ego, refined expression of the ego. So without ego, one does not advance much even on the spiritual path. So the ego has been planted with a purpose, but it is supposed to give way to something different, something just the opposite. Ego is basically about separation. It's a separative principle. It gives way to something which is just the opposite. That's a uniting principle. And what is that? That is love. That is why love has also been planted in us. So love is the antidote to the ego. Love is also there all along in our lives. We experience it in different ways. Sometimes it goes into a bit of an eclipse, but then it can germinate like a seed which is always there. And that's why the love has been planted. And that is how we can end up being concerned more with others, going beyond our little self than the way we arrive in this world. That is what we call evolution of consciousness. That's our consciousness or awareness is now extending beyond our own limited self. So that is expansion or growth of consciousness. We also call it spiritual growth because it is based on the acknowledgement of the universal spirit of the divine in all creation. That is what unites us. So it's based on that acknowledgement, and that's why it's also spiritual growth. So to grow in consciousness or to grow spiritually is something for which human beings have an inherent urge. Not only they have this urge, they also have the capacity. And how can they use this capacity and fulfill this urge? They can do it by loving. And how does this love find an expression? It finds an expression in giving. Giving what we have to those who need it. Initially, we do it the easy way. Give it to parents, give it to the partner, give it to children. Now, these are easy ways which come instinctively to us. From easy things, we progress to difficult things. From primary school, we go to middle, from middle to secondary, and finally to college, and so on. From the way, I mean, you have done graduation and then a postgraduate and then postgraduate courses and so on. So we keep progress. In this field also, we progress. So starting with those types of love, which are confined to those with whom we have a biological relationship or some other relationship, like say we work at the same place or we belong to the same neighborhood, the same country, and so on and so forth. So, starting with some of these narrow considerations, we keep extending and widening it. The more we widen it, which means the more we are feeling one with a much larger group. Of course, it's very easy to say, I love all humanity. That also I must caution. What is difficult is to love one real person. But what is important is that one person whom I decide to love, the criterion for selecting that one person should not be based on these superficial considerations. So long as he is a human being and he needs something which I can give, I should be willing to do that for that person. So that is what the type of love which comes from the highest level. And that is the type of expansion that we experience. And every step on it is spiritual growth, which means we grow through loving the partner, we grow through going through different stages from falling to the stage I was talking to, which may happen during a crisis. We grow by doing that for our children. We grow by doing that for our aged parents. So these are all different avenues and opportunities which we get in life for fulfilling the purpose of life, which is growth of consciousness or spiritual growth, which in turn can be fulfilled by loving. And for that, we get opportunities. But then it doesn't have to stop there. It can extend to more and more, can keep getting wider. And if it has become so wide that it includes everybody, then essentially the circle has disappeared. The boundary, the ego boundary that divided from the rest has disappeared. And what I'm speaking is based quite a bit on what a psychiatrist M. Scott Peck has said. He has a classic book, The Road Less Traveled. Have you read that? No. You should read it as a psychologist. M. Scott Peck, he has talked about these things somewhat along these lines. And what he says is that consolidation of the ego, the building up the ego is important. It's not that the ego is something which is without a purpose. Because eventually, yes, the ego boundaries have to collapse. But how can anything collapse unless it has been constructed? You can't destroy something which has not even been made. So first make it and then live a life in such a way, meaningfully, that it goes towards destruction. You'll say, then why do you have to destroy it? Life can continue like that. And very often it doesn't. But then you find that the happiest of people are those who go through this process and keep expanding this consciousness. So there's joy of giving to somebody who's not related to you is greater than somebody for whom it comes very instinctively. So these are all stages. First, starting with the easy, love, then going to more difficult types of love. But then the more we extend it, the happier actually we keep getting. And more our happiness keeps getting independent of external circumstances. Because a certain stage beyond which our children don't need our love, a certain stage beyond which our parents don't need our love, they leave this world. So the person who can still continue giving and experiencing this process, keep getting that joy and experience that happiness independent of external circumstances, who is able to love anybody who happens to be around him, near him, whom he finds he can give what he has. And if the person has that type of mind, he'll always find plenty of people around whom he can give what he has. So that is what keeps this person going. There are studies which have shown that people who live the longest are actually people of this type. Because a person lives to about 100, by the time he's 100, most of his near and dear ones have already left the world. Even some of his children might have left this world already. What keeps this person going, what keeps this person have still some meaning in his life, what gives purpose to this person's life is the fact that the person is able to love unconditionally just about anybody who happens to be around. That is what keeps this person going. And therefore, it is not because somebody says so or the spiritual point of view says so that this is how we should live. It is in our own interest. If we want to live a happy life, a meaningful life, a long life, for all these and all these go together, what is important is to understand what truly love is about. But then, having said that, we started with falling in love. Unless we start with the initial stage, we may not be able to go to the later stage. One always starts with the easiest. And therefore, any type of love, including falling in love, is better than no love at all. And Sri Aurobindo has talked quite a bit about the different stages of love, as well as the necessity of love and why it has been planted in this world. And quite a bit of it is in very poetic language in Savitri. And at one point, he says that we all start with the mud and then soar towards the sky. So love also expresses itself in mud the way it can express in mud, but then it is from there that we take off and move towards the sky. And in praise of love, he has again a lot to say that love should not cease in this world because it is the bridge between earth and heaven. It is love which can bring the characters of heaven down to earth. It is that which can make this world a much better place to live in. The more love we have in the world, the better this place will be. And that is why love has been planted in this world, and it's a necessity. It has, it is necessary for individuals to live a meaningful life. It is necessary for the world to become a better place, which is the vision of Sri Aurobindo and the mother, that the consciousness of the human race itself is now poised for a big leap. The average itself will go up, so that instead of the average being ego driven, the average itself will become love driven. And that will be the ultimate solution to all the problems of human existence. That is what will change the character of the world and make it a much happier place to live in. So, therefore, I have nothing against falling in love. Any type of love is better than no love at all. But that is just a beginning. One should not stop there. If one stops there, then one will start feeling that love itself is something evil. Love is something bad. We just fall in it, get trapped in it, get infatuated with somebody, and that leads to so much misery. But then, unless we go through that misery sometimes, we can't rise higher. And this another thing that brings me to is that unfortunately, amongst young people, there's one phenomenon which is becoming very common. When they fall in love, they are not really head over heels in love with anybody. They enjoy that very short term fleeting pleasure which they get from the company of the other person. And they're quite willing, consciously, to have that fun without eventually taking the responsibility of a long term committed relationship. I don't know how far that is true. You being a youngster and in contact with a lot of young people may be able to answer that better. Is that really happening? That is, get the fun without the responsibility.
Yeah, actually, that depends on what a person is looking for uh, out of romantic relation and how a person subjectively perceives the meaning of having a romantic relationship. Whether for them the meaning of having a romantic relationship is having a short term relationship where they may or may not decide to uh, go on living their life together, or on the other hand, it could mean for a person getting into a romantic relationship might mean looking for a life partner. So, uh, far as far as I know, and in my knowledge, it has become a very subjective process.
Well, that's understandable. There will be a lot of variation between individuals, but all the same, uh, probably what you're trying to say is that with some, it may truly be just trying to have a little fun without the responsibility. In fact, I was talking to another young psychologist the other day, and she said that these days, when a person says that I'm in love, it can mean two extremes. One can be that I love this person so much that I want to spend the rest of my life with this person. The other thing, it could same using the same words that I am in love with you could mean that I am in love with you for this moment and I'm enjoying the happiness that I'm getting from you right here and now. The rest I don't care for. So these are two extremes. And that extreme of just wanting some fun without the responsibility is also not uncommon. And that is probably what is also responsible for live-in relationships. Once again, one is trying to get the best of both worlds, live together and yet not have that commitment and responsibility. So that is something which is not very much sort of in line with the progression of love to higher rungs. That will not take the person to higher rungs of love. I'm not saying that the first person with whom one thinks one has fallen in love, one should definitely get married to, because the trial phase that one can understand that it's better to part ways before it has cemented into a marital relationship, before the children have come, when it becomes extremely difficult socially, psychologically, and legally to split. So it's better to sort of keep that in mind. But then that should not be the starting point. The very starting point should not be that I'm doing it for fun, the rest I'm not interested in. That is all what I mean.
Absolutely. And it is also very important to have this understanding between the two partners that what this relationship means for the both of them, not only for one person in the relationship, but also it is very important to have this conversation with your partner that what are they looking for? Because as you mentioned in the starting, that one person might fall in love, the other might not. So it's very important to get to know what the other person also wants. Is it in line with what we want? Is it in line with what we are looking for? And what people these days also call different stages of how a romantic relationship builds. Say starting by dating and then looking at the compatibility of you and your partner, and then deciding to get into a relationship, a long term commitment, and then eventually speaking about marriage. So it's in the initial phases when you're dating a person that you talk to them about what you're looking for.
Surely, I mean, and that is why, I mean, you need to spend time together and you need to talk. Uh, that's how you'll come to know each other better. Uh, and again, within that, there are two things. One is what is concrete and measurable and which can be defined in terms of say they discuss a certain topic, are our ideas matching? We talk about the goals of life that they have, the attitude that they have to money, or the attitude that they have to religion. Now they discuss these things: the attitude that they have to sex, the attitude that they have to parenthood, because sometimes couples these days don't want children at all, and so on. So what is there? So if they sort out all these things beforehand, it helps. But then there's another aspect which is more intangible. That is, uh, does it click? How is the chemistry between the two? Now, these are things which you can't really define, but that probably has some relationship to the level of consciousness of the two persons. Are they, when they're each other's company, giving each other positive vibes? Are they able to energize the other person, or are they draining the energy from the other person? Now, these are things which are subtle, but they are a reality. And that is another thing that which is important, apart from all these very concrete details. And That becomes particularly important when one of the partners is at a level of consciousness distinctly higher than the average. If both of them are the average level, probably it will not matter much. But if one is at a distinctly higher level, then that person could have difficulties if their relationship becomes long term and involves a commitment and responsibility, because then their goals and aspirations in life are likely to be different. Because I come across, particularly women have a greater problem if the woman is at a higher level of consciousness, because I come across many such women being in a place where, I mean, we tend to have self selected populations of people who are having a strong spiritual inclination. Very often these women are married to people who are not similarly inclined. So they have great deal of difficulty convincing their husbands, uh, because the husband feels that why is she going and volunteering somewhere, teaching some children free. There's enough work at home, enough to look after the children, enough to take care of the house. Or if not that, then you are educated. Why don't you help me with my business instead? That will have some monetary returns. So why do you want to go and do all this work free somewhere else? They can't understand it. So that happens when the level of consciousness is not matching, and the women have more of this difficulty because, again, the way we are organized in the society, if the man is at a higher level and he wants to do something very independently, he can get away with it much more easily. It is the poor woman who can't. That's what makes people like me also feel more sympathetic to women. Of course, having said that, women have also more chances of growing spiritually in life, although those may not give them much visibility. For example, the way they take care of the family, the way they take care of the children, typically, forgetting themselves completely, uh, are something through which something remarkable is happening to them. They are growing spiritually. And that's why if you talk to a woman who has gone through this type of a life by the time she's about 50, she's a completely different type of person, much more loving, caring, much more willing to give and share than when she started 25 or 30 years ago. So all this change has come about, and all this points to a level of consciousness distinctly higher than the one which she started. So she's experienced that growth of consciousness. She has experienced spiritual growth. She has fulfilled the purpose of her life, but she has not had much visibility while doing so. She'll not have the type of visibility, say, which a spiritual teacher has while giving lectures, although that may contribute much less to spiritual growth. So the visibility is lacking, but the process neither depends upon visibility nor upon how you are fulfilling the purpose, or whether you even understand terms like spiritual growth and growth of consciousness. The process is completely independent of all these. The process will take place so long as you're doing what you are supposed to do. So that's why a lot of women are perhaps experiencing it without even knowing what they have gone through and why it has happened and why they are ending up being much sweeter and much happier, much more equanimous. That is, able to maintain equanimity under all circumstances, which means their happiness or well being has become independent of external circumstances. They may not always think of it, reflect upon it, but that is happening to many of these women only because they've gone through this process of tremendous spiritual growth during the 3 or 4 decades that they were taking care of the children, the in laws, our own parents, the family, and all sometimes without being thanked enough for it. In fact, women come and talk, when they come talk in confidence, sometimes want to unburden themselves by sharing. They say all what they get in return is criticism. But in spite of that, they just go on doing it. So I think we have come full circle, starting with falling in love, talking about how so many women are experiencing the highest rungs of love without even realizing it. Sure, any more questions? Okay.
So, you shed a light on the different stages of love, different forms of love, and what love can look like in different relationships as well. Uh, Coming back to what you said about human love, are there any ways that we can enhance our experience, we can enhance our relationships when we are in that phase of human love? Because, as you said, conflicts do arise, and it's a continuous effort that we have to put into uh, keep building the relationship, uh, keep the relationship intact, keep, experiencing love to keep that spark alive. So, how do we, uh, you know, not completely arrive at a stage where we then wonder where has the love gone? How to keep it present?
That's a very good question because uh, it's a necessary stage between falling in love when all seems hunky dory and reaching the stage in which there's a crisis and you are entirely concerned with the other person and experiencing the joy of giving. The in between phase, which is typically, say, 20 years or so, is also a important phase, and there's no reason why it has to be lusterless. It may not have that same type of romance which was there when the couple fell in love, but all the same, it can be much more interesting and much more enjoyable. And for that, the immediate answer which I could think of was that one should uh, continue to express one's love by giving what the other person needs, which means using the language, love language of the other person. There's a person called Gary Chapman who has sort of tried to uh, put it in concrete terms in terms of 5 languages of love. Have you heard of that? 5 love languages.
Yes.
So maybe if I can't remember all the 5, you'll complete the list. He says we express our love in 5 different ways, and that is what he calls the love languages. And the he says the first love language is that we want to do something for the other person. That is doing some work for the other person. The second important love language is we want to praise the other person, want to give some compliments. The third love language is that we just want to spend time with the person. The fourth is we want to touch the other person in an affectionate manner. And the fifth is they just want to spend time together. Now these are 5 different love languages. And the predominant love language, that is what is appreciated the most by one person, need not be the same that is appreciated by the other person. It could happen in perfectly compatible partners also. So what does one have to try and do? Try to find out the love language of the partner and give the person that thing, what the other partner appreciates. And if the other partner does the same, both of them end up getting what they want without having to ask for it and without having to suffer. I want this, and why is this person insisting on giving me something else? Because if the person thinks that if I like this very much, then probably the other person will also like it. It may not be always true. The other person may not like what you like. So, which means that they have to understand each other in many ways. And one of the ways they have to understand each other is what is the favored love language of the other person. Is it touching? Is it paying compliments? Is it doing some work for somebody, say helping in the kitchen or whatever? Or what is the type of thing that makes the other person most happy? And try to do that for the other person. That can make that second phase also much more enjoyable.
This sounds like some really good advice, and this sounds like uh, something I've heard about also recently that, first discovering what is your love language and then communicating it to your partner and also paying attention to your partner's love language.
Any other questions, Asmita?
I think we've come full circle in
Okay.
discussing about many aspects of a relationship, about love, and what it can look like.
Yes, I think it's enough for today, and we can always meet again if necessary. And thank you for asking these questions that helped me also clarify my own ideas and come up with many things which I've often thought about, but probably not expressed them always so clearly. Thank you.
Thank you for your valuable answers.